Hello out there. We're on the air. Got to make sure I got the right mic. Sounds good. Looks good. Feeling good. Feeling a little hungover. But we're here. That's what matters. Good morning. Happy Monday, everybody. YouTube, zap.stream. Oh, I didn't send out my nostr thing yet. Let me do that real quickly. I've been forgetting the last couple mornings, so I got to get this one right. Okay, we'll put that on the back burner for a sec. Good morning. Welcome back to another episode, another show of the daily Bitcoin journey. Can you guys hear me okay? This is kind of a new mic. I ordered a new mic, but this mic is going to have to do in the meantime. I think it sounded pretty good the last couple shows, so maybe just give me a confirmation that this mic is okay. I've been tweaking with it a little bit, but anyways, welcome back to the daily Bitcoin journey. Actionable and logical discussion for Bitcoiners and for future Bitcoiners. It is nice to see everybody in the chat this morning. Bitcoiners are always here before me. Good morning, wonderful Bitcoiners. Bitcoin is the signal. Everything else is noise. From our friend Rock and Roll. Crypto Heathen is in the house. Hello, Cost-Jello. Hope everybody had a great weekend. Mondays, smashing the likes help Mondays even be even better. What a generous guy that Rick is in the chat every morning, making sure that everybody's pushing this network forward. Okay, and we are live on zap.stream as well. There we go. Daniel, shout out to Daniel in the chat on zap.stream. We got a new goal in there for a new snowblower. So Daniel's the first to contribute to that one. Thank you, Daniel. And Noah's in the chat over there as well. So if you want to go to the Bitcoin chat, the new version of YouTube, integrated with Bitcoin, much more functional, much more fun, go to bitcoinjourney.ca, bitcoinjourney.ca/stream. And you can find the stream there right there. Usually there's a fair amount of people in there. One day we had more people in there than YouTube. So check that out, bitcoinjourney.ca/stream. You can connect it to your Nostr account, but you don't have to. You can just set up a profile in there, connect it to your LB, or however you do that, and you can begin having some fun over on zap.stream. Higher calling, this is a great message here, great comment. Beware of influencers pushing the ETF. I agree. ETF, there's nothing that we can do about it. Personally, I think it's going to be more of a problem in the future, but in the meantime, it's bringing a lot of capital into Bitcoin. It's bringing a lot of eyes into Bitcoin. And I do foresee a day where there's going to be some big problems in the ETF world, but not there yet. We got lots of time before that. And I think I do have some ETF myself. So I'm not an influencer. I'm not pushing the ETF. I'm just being honest with you. I have some ETFs because I want to take advantage of some tax stuff here in Canada. That's my thoughts on it. And I do think that it's a really good way for people, if they do have some money in the old system, in the traditional system, it's a very good bridge to have some price exposure to Bitcoin. But it is just a bridge there. It's an in-between. Eventually you want to go from the ETF, cash some of that out in a tax efficient way, and then start holding your own keys to Bitcoin, because that is the beauty of Bitcoin. That's what it was designed to be. Not so much a store of value. It does a really good job of that, but that's it's a currency. It's a peer-to-peer cash. And that's going to be the focus on today's show, actually. Thank you, Rick. Thanks for the 5x5 there, people in the chat. Appreciate that. Johnny's in the house. Jason's in the house. And higher calling. I think I've seen higher calling in here before, but it's good to see everybody. Okay, so let's, I'm just going to post this out to Nostr real quickly. Bitcoinjourney.ca/stream. head over to the zap.stream. I came up with a couple ideas over the weekend in terms of what we're going to do with zap.stream going forward. And it's kind of based on, I was listening to Rabbit Hole Recap on the weekend. And I really like how they use a certain percentage of their zap.stream zaps for OpenSats. So I'm kind of in between going towards OpenSats. I do think that's a really good initiative, but I also want to set up a couple different ones. One of them is going to be for men's mental health. I want to over time. Nothing's going to be, set up overnight. Everything takes time, but I would like to set up some sort of Bitcoin fund for mental health for men. Because I think that the fiat world that's been created since 1971, when we went off the gold standard, I think it's had a very negative impact on that mental health of men. And so I want to set up a little bit of a fund for that going into the future. And I'm going to take a certain percentage of the zap.stream and put it towards that. And also I want to do something for the women too. Thinking maybe like a women's shelter. Like I said, this is just an idea. I think I'm going to start doing it, and it will take quite a bit of time for it to amount to anything. But as we're going to learn today, the perfect time to be doing anything and starting anything is today. So I like the expression shoot then aim. Sometimes you just got to start doing shit and then figure it out afterwards. Not great advice for everything in life, but I do think that people could, get a lot further ahead by doing that instead of waiting for the perfect time to do everything. So let's take a look here to see how I can share this quickly. There we go. I'll get better at this. I'm a new YouTuber here, folks. Okay, we're good. So let's get to some shit here. Today's episode is titled Prepare for the New P2P Economy. Friday we had a title for the show and we never even touched on the topic. There's too much going on in the world, in the chat, and so we never got to it. So we're going to put that one on the back burner for a little while. But today we're focused on the new P2P economy. And so I'm going to get to that. We got some cool things to talk about. I think a lot of people will. This one's going to be more focused towards people who are kind of already here in Bitcoin, here on Nostr, here on Zap.stream, and what we can be doing and focusing on going forward. But before we do that, we got to get to the metrics. We got to get to some news and some other stuff. Brendan is in the house. Good morning, my friend. Noah's over in Zap.stream. Rick is in both, it looks like. And Daniel also in Zap.stream. He says, I have some in my task advantaged HSA account. I guess he means ETF. So there's a utility for it. I don't think that you should have a significant amount of your wealth, your allocation into a Bitcoin ETF. But I think for the next little while, we're going to be pretty good with that. So the metrics today, sorry, I'm kind of all over the place here right now. It's Monday morning. Got to shake off some rust. So let's get to the metrics for today before we go any further. Window. So this is mempool.space. Great resource for any Bitcoiner out there. We are currently at block height 836,245. If you're transacting on the Bitcoin Layer 1 network, you're paying about 10 to 20. Oh, holy. 6 sats per VByte a couple blocks ago. 6. That's the lowest I've seen it probably in the last 6 months. So you know what that means. If you do have any Bitcoin to send, if you have any Bitcoin to consolidate into UTXOs, some fresh UTXOs, I'd say 6 sats per VByte sounds pretty good to me. The metrics, the price, 67,197 today. 1 year ago, March 25th, 2023, price was $27,494 US dollars. And 4 years ago today, you could have purchased one Bitcoin for $6,702. Moscow time today, which is we got an anniversary today of Moscow time. So apparently, according to, what's this one called? time chain calendar. According to them, 3 years ago today, March 25th, 2021, that's when Moscow time was kind of what came into existence. And from what I understand of that is that Jack Dorsey, who's a big contributor to open source and big contributor to Nostr and a few different Bitcoin initiatives, he was testifying in front of Congress about Twitter. And he had a block clock behind him. I'm sure most people have seen the block clock with all the different metrics within Bitcoin on it. It's a non-kyc product. But I think it was like 1934. That's what the time was on this clock. And of course, with that audience, and he's talking in front of Congress, there were people in the chat who thought that that was Russian time in Russia, in Moscow, and that he was a Russian spy. So that's kind of how Moscow time came to be. But really, he had a block clock there, and it was showing the price, how many sats $1 will get you. So since then, it's been coined as Moscow time. So that was 3 years ago today when people were accusing Jack of being a Russian spy because he had a block clock behind him. And so at the time, I think it was about I forget what the time was. Anyways, the time today, Moscow time, is $1 will get you 1,488 sats. Here in Canada today, the price is 91,358 Canadian dollars. And the Moose Jaw time, which is the Canadian equivalent of Moscow time, $1 Canadian, 1 loonie will get you 1,096 sats. Pretty good. Pretty good deal. Okay, according to Jose in the Zap.stream chat, the time was 1952. So people thought that he was displaying Moscow time, like the time in Russia, but it was a block clock. So pretty funny. That is the metrics for today. We do have some news. Let's check on the chat here quickly. Shoot then aim. 1 foot in front of the other. Correct. How many UTXOs in a wallet warrant consolidation? That's a great question. So it's not really based on the amount of UTXOs. It's based on the size of the UTXOs. And what you have to keep in mind with your UTXOs is the future. So whenever you want to spend the Bitcoin, UTXOs, let's say you have 5 UTXOs with about 250,000 sats each in those. You have to plan for in the future. When do you plan on spending that Bitcoin? If you're going to be spending it at a time where you can spend 250 sats at a time, then that's probably okay. But if you're going to be spending it sooner than that, then you probably have to consider there is really no right way to consolidate and to set your UTXOs up. You do just have to keep in mind when you want to be spending it. And so if you foresaw a cost in the future of 1 million sats, then you'd have to spend 4 of those UTXOs and you'd pay 4 times the transaction fee essentially for the sats per VByte. That's what it is. So, I mean, even if you had like 10 different UTXOs with smaller amounts, if you spent those smaller amounts properly, you could still do it in an efficient way. It's just when you have to consolidate those in a high fee environment, that's when you're going to get burned by it. So there's really no proper for everybody in terms of how many UTXOs you should have or what the size of those UTXOs should be. It's all based on when you want to be spending it. So that's what I would consider with that. Pomp had a dream. Bitcoin is at 377,000 after the halving. It's a pretty good dream. I don't think it's too far-fetched of a dream. I mean, in our living in the future tier, we're already living as if Bitcoin is $100 million. So 377 would be nice, but we got a long ways to go. Even if it was at 377 tomorrow, I'm not spending any of my sats for sure. Oh, there you go. Brennan says, I started accumulating because of a dream I had. I believe in them. You ain't wrong. Sachi says, maximum of 1 million sats per UTXO for privacy. Have some, yes, this is great advice. Have some UTXOs around 500,000 and a few a little bit lower for spending. Good rule of thumb is if you have 50 UTXO in a wallet, it's time to consolidate. Yep. Because then you'd have to think through that exact scenario there. If you have 50 UTXOs and you want to really optimize those fees, then you'd have to have 50 different times that you're spending those UTXOs, 50 different occasions where you're spending it to maximize your efficiency of your fees. Because you basically only want to pay a fee on one UTXO. That's kind of what you want to get to. It's very hard and almost impossible at this point to really plan for that, but that is what you want to be doing. So that's great advice from Sachi in the YouTube chat. So there you have it. Great advice to start the morning today. Okay, so some news here. This news, every morning, every show, we go through a couple relevant pieces of news, but definitely don't spend the whole show talking about news. Just kind of got to keep everybody in the loop. And so Bitcoin news, the best place to get Bitcoin news other than the daily Bitcoin journey is on Bitcoin news. So they're a sponsor of the show. Big shout out to them. If you are interested in kind of what I do every morning, I check Twitter. I don't do anything else on Twitter other than go to Bitcoin news Twitter feed and see what's going on there. So they also have a really good website. I'll show it here quickly. You can bookmark this a couple times a day. You can check, see what's going on in the Bitcoin world. And there's a little bit of a ticker here. You can see all the different metrics at the top and the breaking news. So anything that's hot off the press right at the top there. So that's bitcoinnews.com. And with that, let's get to some news here. I'm going to take this down for a sec. So speaking of UTXOs, this is a good one to start with. This is from the Bitcoin News Twitter feed. It says new Bitcoin whale transfers 8,734 Bitcoin, approximately $5 million worth between unknown wallets. So this is a good example of somebody who has managed their UTXOs quite well. Because you can see in every Bitcoin transaction, if you send a Bitcoin transaction, you can go find it on mempool.space. You just copy the transaction ID, paste it into mempool.space, and you'll get the flow of it. You can see the whole breakdown of the transaction. So this is kind of the ideal flow that you want. You can see it. There's a couple different things it looks like, but you want a fat UTXO. That's what you want it to look like. You don't want a whole bunch of different ones going off because then you're going to be paying a big fee for it. So kind of what I wanted to show on this was that they paid, what did it say? 500 million worth of Bitcoin. They paid $1.71 in fees. And yeah, it's cool to buy coffee with Bitcoin. It's cool to buy a t-shirt online with Bitcoin. But this is what Bitcoin layer 1 is going to be used for in the future, for these type of transactions, these huge transactions. In this case, 8,700 Bitcoin was sent. And you can see the breakdown here. So before the transaction, they had 87,000 in the wallet. They sent Bitcoin 8,700. That's this little bottom part here. And then their main stack continues going forward. And there's a little wee fee right off the top there. So it's pretty cool. $1.71. If you think about how much money, fees, how many people would be involved for a transaction like that of $500 million anywhere else other than Bitcoin, think about how much that would cost and think about how many people would be involved with that. This cost $1.71 and they didn't need anybody's permission to do it. So that I think that this is a good indication of kind of what the future is going to look like. If you can set yourself up now, if you can manage your UTXOs in an efficient way now, you're going to be very well off and very set up for the future for this kind of stuff. These will replace the bank wires in the future. Bitcoin layer 1 will replace the bank wires in the future. So that's the first piece of news there. I should probably just have these up, but I want to make sure that I'm talking through them in the right order. There is a short clip here we're going to watch. I don't know if it's this one or not. Things are running a little bit hot. Too many tabs open as usual here. Okay, so this is a cool one. I just wanted to show this one because we talk about Bitcoin mining off and on the show here. But this one says many Bitcoin miners are moving rigs out of the US to Africa and South America ahead of the halving, per Bloomberg. So 600,000 S9T and miners are on the move due to cheaper energy. These rigs, once costing $11,500 each, may only be worth about $350 after the halving. So I thought this was very interesting for a couple of reasons. The first one is this is just going to continue to happen over time. Every time that a new mining machine comes out, which is more efficient, you can get more hash rate out of it for less power. It's going to make the old ones not obsolete, but they're going to move to Africa. They're going to move to South America where there is cheaper energy there. Because it doesn't really make sense for some of these smaller countries in Africa and South America to be paying $11,000 each. But if they can get them for $350 and utilize some of that natural energy, that's a pretty big win. And over time, the second part of that is that's going to be the natural transition of Bitcoin to everything. Bitcoin's going to find the cheapest source of energy. And when you can plug something in for $350, utilize that cheap energy, that's how the world is going to be totally decentralized with Bitcoin. It's never going to centralize in one place. So pretty cool. And I think that's part of this next one here too. Oh, we're in the Gmail, but that's okay. That's Bitcoin mining in terms of the hash rate moving around based on the cheapest source of energy. And then this last one I thought was pretty cool too. And so there's probably a lot of people out there who gamble, who play the lottery. But this is also something kind of cool from Bitcoin News. It says, try solo Bitcoin mining instead of lottery tickets. Solo Bitcoin mining could be an alternative to lottery tickets, offering potential earnings and contributing to Bitcoin's decentralization and security. So if we look back at the mempool.space, this miner here, which was F2 pool. So that's who mined this last block. And for that, they got 6.3 Bitcoin for the subsidy and the fees on that, for a total of $427,000. That's what the value is today. So every 10 minutes, approximately 6 to 7 Bitcoin are paid out to miners. So the majority of these blocks that have been mined, this one's from F2 pool, this one's from Ant pool, this one's another pool for Foundry USA. But if you were to hook up a miner at your house, and as Bitcoin adoption grows, there's going to be more and more products and companies who are offering like small miners where you can just hook it up. It won't use much energy. It won't produce much noise or heat, but it'll just be like a lottery ticket. And if you happen to hit that ticket, you're going to get about $450,000 worth today. So I do think that people will, over time, once they learn about Bitcoin mining and learn the opportunities there, they are going to stop buying lottery tickets and just start hooking up a Bitcoin miner in their house. Because the chances, it's the same kind of thing. But with that, basically what you're doing is just trying to hit the mathematical equation like lottery numbers, but with the Bitcoin. So also with that, think about how decentralized that's going to make everything. Because the more people who are plugging in miners at their house, the more decentralized Bitcoin network is, and the harder it becomes to stop. If every person out there is running their own node and hooked up a miner to the hash rate, becomes very decentralized, very powerful. And so I do think that over time, people like us will be able to start mining Bitcoin at home. And I foresee a day in the not so distant future where I'm going to be heating this whole house with Bitcoin miners. So when you do that, when you do hook up a miner, you have an option between either a solo miner or a pool. So if you hook up as a solo miner, you're trying to solve the block yourself. You're trying to solve that equation yourself. And if you happen to hit that equation, if your small miner ends up guessing the right equation, you get all of that Bitcoin for yourself. 6 Bitcoin comes your way. If you hook up to a pool, which is what most people do, you're going to get a much more steady income because the pool has a much greater chance of hitting that equation, and you're going to get a payout based on your percentage in that pool. So most people do go towards the mining pools just because it's a guarantee that you're going to get some Bitcoin back. But if you're just somebody running a small miner at your house and it doesn't cost you much to do, maybe setting up a solar miner is the answer for that. So kind of cool. I think that there's even Bitcoin heaters, like a space heater that has a Bitcoin miner in it. And you could just hook that up to a solo miner. And who knows, maybe one day you'd wake up and you would be the miner of the last block and you'd have 6 Bitcoin in your wallet. And yes, great point here from Nate. The ultimate no KYC Bitcoin, a solo miner who solved the block. Imagine getting 6 Bitcoin, no KYC. We're kind of already past that though, because in less than a month from now, that's going to go down to 3 Bitcoin per block. Even if you hit the block reward, you're only going to get 3 Bitcoin. And in 4 years, you're going to get 1.5 Bitcoin. So the theme of today is start doing things now. Nate says, they say Bitcoin is slow, but that took one confirmation at 10 minutes. Days for banks. Yep. Not only is it going to be much cheaper, and that's a great point from Nate as well. Not only is it going to be much cheaper to send a Bitcoin layer 1 transaction than versus a bank wire, but it's also much faster. If you ever sent a bank wire before, you have to call the bank. You have to give them the wire info. They have to process it. It has to arrive at the other bank. And sometimes it can be 4 hours. Sometimes it can be 4 days. With a Bitcoin transaction, as Nate says here, if you set the priority high enough and you pay enough of a fee, it's 10 minutes till that whole thing is done. And once that block is mined, your transaction is going to be within that block. And that block, the new updated ledger, the blockchain, is going to be broadcast out to every single person in the world running a Bitcoin node. And so every person running a node is going to have a copy, an updated copy of the blockchain. And so there's absolutely no way for you to ever reverse that or change that transaction. And to me, that's kind of what you use a bank wire for, because there's no way to reverse it. There's no chargebacks there. There's no risk of the receiver or the sender of that money going back on their word. So for houses, for house purchases, for large settlements, Bitcoin layer 1 is going to be very useful for us in the future. And it already is. It's just that most people obviously don't really need that for the most part, or aren't aware of it. So let's check out the last part here. I don't know why this is so big. Somebody with bad eyes must have been using my computer. So this is a video from Bitcoin News as well. This is going to be the last piece of news for the morning. And another great point. So we got, that's why I love the chat. This is why I love this live show, is because it's hard to say things live on the internet, but when you have a very knowledgeable chat that's interactive, everything kind of comes together for you. So you got the fees. It's cheap if you do it right. It's very fast. You don't have to wait days for it to confirm. And you don't need anybody's permission for it. You don't need to call the bank. You can do it without anybody's permission. So that's kind of the trifecta of the Bitcoin layer 1. Okay, so here's the video. This is Andre Antonopoulos. Oh, came in a little hot there, Andre. Okay, let's add this on here. And let's get to the vid. This is only a minute long. Just so you're aware of that. Share. Mute.
A decade from now, a 10-year-old will be able to run the SWIFT network on their smartphone. They'll be able to be a bank and a brokerage house on their smartphone. By the time they're allowed at 16 to open a bank account, they've probably spent 5 or 6 years using Bitcoin on a day-to-day basis as their currency. Because in a global connected world, credit cards don't work for minors, and they're going to end up using Bitcoin. In fact, we're already seeing this. So by the time they get to banking, they've got 6 years of experience with Bitcoin. Try explaining to them what 3 to 5 business days for clearing a check means. Try explaining what a check is. Try explaining why they have to pay you £5 to keep their account with you. Try to explain them what an overdraft fee is. While you're at it, you might as well sell them a landline and a fax machine, because they're just as likely to get one of those as they are to open a bank account. A decade from now, a 10-year-old will be able to run the SWIFT network on their smartphone. They'll be able to be a bank and a brokerage.
So that is Andre. That is one of the OGs of Bitcoin. Talking about kids, talking about the future, and talking about kind of where we are today in terms of we're in the middle of a transition here. And this is, maybe I'll tie this into the next part here as best I can. I was going to talk about something else, but let's just get into the main part of the show here. Because last time I waited too long to do that and we missed the entire topic of the show. So let's talk about that right now. But before we do that, we're going to catch up on the zap.stream here. It looks like things are happening in the zap.stream chat. Sorry, I can't really keep up with everything there. I do want to find a way to show these comments from zap.stream on the show. And I was talking to Kieran. Maybe Kieran's in the chat today. Who knows? But it sounds like we're going to try it from the platform that I use to bring it up here. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, there's just some chat back and forth there. So we'll leave that as is. But yes, $350 for an S19, as Jose says in the zap.stream chat. Pretty good. I think if you're somebody who is wanting to just try out Bitcoin, instead of paying $11,000 to buy a miner and figure that out yourself, $350 is a much more reasonable price point for that. And so kind of the difference between an S9 and an S19 and what's coming in the future is the efficiency of it. So I'm sure most people have heard of an S9. That was kind of the original Bitcoin miner. And so as we evolve, as these miners become more efficient, essentially what they're doing is they're requiring less power for more hash rate. And so that's the trade-off there between $11,000 and $350, is that as they become more efficient, people are going to flock towards those machines and not make these obsolete, but offer them to the people who can afford $350 because they have cheaper energy. So everything comes full circle in Bitcoin. And so there was a big article posted, I think it was by our friends at the World Economic Forum, talking about Bitcoin miners and how bad it's going to be for the environment to have to dispose of all these Bitcoin miners once they're done. But I don't think they're ever going to be done. I think that if somebody sells them, somebody else is going to hook it up somewhere else. Not only making a new market for it, but further decentralizing the Bitcoin network. So the whole thing is just like genius in terms of how this whole thing is going to run. But let's get back to Andreas and what he's talking about there. So he's talking about kids. And I'm a big believer of that as well. I think the kids who are growing up right now aren't ever going to go into a bank. And I have nothing against banks. I still use banks almost every day for paying bills and for other things. But it's just a natural progression of technology and of everything. Nobody's going to stop using a bank because they're mad at them. They're going to stop using a bank because they have a better option. And that better option is here. It's Bitcoin. It exists. It's being built, and it's going to further be built to accommodate for everybody out there who's not techy enough to kind of figure out everything right now. But over time, that's what's going to happen. We are going to move from this traditional system into the new system. And as that happens, as the people who have grown up with a bank, as those people pass on and die, the older generation, the newer generation will be the ones who are the main market. And that'll happen. It's not something that just we flip a switch, happens overnight. This is all just a big transition that happens. And we're seeing it right now. There's not going to be a kid that's born today will never use a bank. Will never go to a bank, walk into a bank. It just won't happen. We're already kind of there already. Like, when was the last time you were in a bank? For the average person, we can do everything online. And so we're kind of getting used to that. And then all of a sudden Bitcoin shows up and makes all of these other Visas, MasterCards, banks pretty much obsolete. And it's kind of weird to say that, but that's going to be the focus of today's show, is that we're cutting out the middleman. And what does that look like? That's what you have to think about, that is we're cutting out the middleman. So on the Bitcoin white paper, the very top, it reads a peer-to-peer electronic cash, Bitcoin. And that sounds good in principle, peer-to-peer. You're cutting out the middleman. You're probably going to save a lot of fees with that. But you also have to take it a step further, and you have to think about what that's going to look like for your life. Because we've grown up in a world where the middleman really ensures a lot for us. It keeps both sides honest in a transaction. And so if you get rid of that, yes, you're going to save some fees, but you're also going to have a lot of risk involved there. And that's, as this transition happens, that risk is going to go down. But if you want to find a way to get ahead of that, and if you really want to optimize this economy, this new peer-to-peer economy, you have to start doing it today. And so kind of how I like to think about that is, think about it like your social credit score. I'm sure a lot of people in this chat watching this show have heard about the social credit score and how it's going to impact your life. And I want to take a little bit of a different spin on that social credit score. So I do think you're going to have a social credit score. I don't think it's going to be used in such a negative way like everybody thinks it's going to. Kind of, I would say the majority of people, they hear social credit score and they think of, having your bank account frozen because you made a bad tweet, or having your bank account frozen because you posted a video on YouTube that certain people didn't like. That's kind of what most people think with a social credit score. Or if you cross the road at a non-crosswalk, you're going to get dinged $50 from your bank account. That's kind of how most people think of a social credit score. But that's assuming that we're going to continue living in a centralized world where there's going to be somebody who has the ability to shut you off. And so as this transition plays out, I think that there's going to be about 3 or 4 different economies that are existing within it. Okay, so hear me out. The first one is going to be as it is today. It's going to be, some people are buying Bitcoin, some people are holding fiat, some people are using Facebook Marketplace, some people are using LinkedIn. Like, there's people who do all of these, not just an extreme, but they do a little bit of everything. And I think that's the average person right now. They're just kind of getting a feel for everything. There's also going to be the social credit system, as it's the evil part of that. So I think that there's going to be people who don't want to work or can't work, and they're going to be supplemented with some sort of universal basic income. And so what that's going to look like is there will be some sort of social credit tied to that. And maybe there should be, in terms of, you shouldn't be using that money for drugs, for example. So there'll be some bad things that come from that. But when you're relying on the government, or when you're relying on somebody to feed you, you're at the mercy of them. And so if you are somebody, I'm guessing nobody in this chat is going to be an example of this person. But if you don't want to work, if you just want to take advantage of the system, you can get free money, but you're going to have to comply to a bunch of different things that they tell you to do. You'll only be able to visit different websites. You'll only be able to shop at different stores with this money. So that's one extreme. But I also think that the other side of that, and what most people in this chat are more likely to fall into, is the peer-to-peer economy, which means that you're going to have Bitcoin. You're going to find other people in the world who accept Bitcoin, and that's how you're going to run your life. You can set yourself up to live on a Bitcoin standard in a Bitcoin economy. It just takes time to get there. So a couple things to keep in mind here with that is that you will have a social credit score in both systems. And all three of these systems are going to exist for, I would say, quite a while still. And as we go forward, I think that the people from that first group, the average person who's kind of dabbling into both right now, they probably will go one way or the other, but it'll take time. That could be, it could be 10 years, it could be 20 years. But over time, they'll either go into the centralized social credit system or the peer-to-peer reputation trust system. Because if you think about kind of one of the main phrases in Bitcoin is don't trust, verify. I'm sure everybody's heard that. But that kind of suggests that Bitcoiners don't trust anybody, and you have to have some sort of verification there. So I think it's a little bit different than that. I think that Bitcoiners are going to start building networks, start building their own economies, and there is going to be the inherent trust there first. People are going to be just kind of trustworthy by nature. But there also is a way to verify that, right? And what I think that verification process is going to be is your online reputation. So if you think about Nostr, and I really believe that Nostr is going to become essentially the new internet, the new, not decentralized, but censorship resistant internet. Currently it's being used for like a social media type deal, like almost like a Twitter. But I think that it's going to basically encompass, if you are somebody who wants to participate in this, Nostr is going to be connected to everything. And so with that, kind of the difference between Nostr and the traditional world, traditional internet, is that with Nostr, you have one private key. One private key. So that's going to help you manage your passwords a little bit better. Obviously, you're not going to have to keep track of 1,000 different usernames, 1,000 different passwords. You're going to have one private key. But with that comes a lot of responsibility. And I think that some people are kind of overlooking that aspect of it right now. And so with that peer-to-peer electronic cash, you have to think about what that peer-to-peer means for you. So with that one private key, that's going to give you access to every single client on Nostr. It's going to be connected to your socials. It's going to be connected to your music. It's going to be connected to your Zap.stream, everything. You're going to have one private key for that. So what you need to be doing and what you need to focus on is building up your own social credit score. Because there is going to be, I think, we're just going to start building our own smaller economies here. So if you think about that, think about every month. Every month, how do you spend your money? What do you do with it? So you probably buy food. You probably you get a haircut. You might pay a dog sitter. You might pay somebody to cut your grass, shovel your snow. You also pay for your mortgage. You also pay for your insurance. And so with that, we are going to be coexisting in both systems for a while. But think about the ones where you could find somebody out there who sells whatever it is that you need every month with Bitcoin, for Bitcoin. And if you really focus on finding that network and growing that network, then you don't even care about what's happening in the old system. And so with that private key, you're going to have access to all these different networks, all these different platforms. But in order for people to trust you, you're going to have some sort of a reputation there. And the best way to start building that network is to have a positive reputation. And so if you can focus all of your time and energy into finding that network where you can pay your hairdresser in Bitcoin, you can pay your butcher with Bitcoin, you can pay the kid who cut your grass with Bitcoin, then the old system doesn't even matter to you anymore. It's completely irrelevant. You don't have to worry about that anymore. All you really need to focus on is your network, your small network. And if you can find people to pay in Bitcoin for everything that you need, your life changes. You're out of the old system. You are still going to have some expenses, like I said, for the insurance, for your mortgage, whatever else. But over time, there's going to be companies that pop up that offer that service where you can just pay them in Bitcoin, and then they pay the insurance company. So there's still going to be a middleman there in that aspect, but it'll just take time. That's it. So kind of what I'm getting at here, the moral of the story is that you should really be focused on building your online reputation. Do that on Nostr, do that on Zap.stream, do that on anywhere that connects to your Nostr, and start building your online reputation there, because it's going to become very valuable in the future. If you don't have a middleman to kind of provide the cushion there for people doing that transaction, nobody's going to transact with you. Because currently with the old system, it's not peer-to-peer. It has some sort of in between there, but that is that's a comfort level for a lot of people. That's what gives people trust and confidence to make that transaction, whether that's on eBay, whether that's on PayPal, whatever that is, it gives another layer of trust to people there. And if you take that away, you're going to have to have an inherent trust built on your reputation. And the further this goes, the more I think. So let's just play this out, and I'll give you an example of kind of what I'm talking about here. And I've shared this on the show, but I'm sure there's new listeners, and I think that this is very relevant for right now. So a couple weeks ago, I had let's just say an item here in the house that I have been meaning to sell for like the last 6 months. And finally, I just took a picture of it. I posted it on Nostr, and I said, does anybody want this? I'll give you a discount for paying in sats. And within 2 or 3 hours there, I had a buyer for that product. And before I shipped it to him, he sent me Bitcoin. And the only reason he did that is because I had been on Nostr for about a year now. And I have a reputation on there in terms of, not like a reputation of being anything, but as a reputation of being active on there, of interacting with other people, being a trustworthy person. And the more we go along here, the more important that reputation is going to be. So if I did something wrong there and he sent me Bitcoin and I didn't ship him the product, or something went wrong in the transaction, all of a sudden there's going to be question marks around my online reputation, right? And it's not going to be worth it for you in the future to kind of put that in jeopardy ever. So I think that system alone, the peer-to-peer network there, is going to require trust. You're going to have to earn that trust. You're going to have to put in the work to earn that trust. And the only way that trust is earned is through time and interaction. So basically what I'm saying today is make sure that have this at the top of your mind. Don't just get onto Nostr and start posting memes. Don't just get onto Nostr and start asking a bunch of questions and using people on there, but really focus on why you're doing it, why you're on Nostr, because you're trying to build yourself a new economy, an economy that nobody can stop, an economy that nobody can get in between. And when you have that reputation built, you're going to be unstoppable in this new future. You're not going to give a shit about your social credit score in terms of the next UBI payment. You're going to be perfectly set up in this new economy, this peer-to-peer economy. You're going to be perfectly set up for everything that you need in your life. You can pay in Bitcoin. And the longer this goes on, the more valuable Bitcoin becomes and the more leverage you're going to have to use in that new economy. So hopefully you're on Nostr. Hopefully you're thinking about this kind of stuff, because I do think that this is going to be the most important aspect of our journey here, is our reputation. It's one thing to just buy Bitcoin and sit on it and continue doing everything that you do in the old system. That doesn't help Bitcoin at all. You get some Bitcoin, you figure out ways how to earn Bitcoin. And you might be somebody out there who feels like you're never going to get to 1 Bitcoin just because it costs so much now in terms of dollars, and how much time and effort and energy you'd have to put into that to earn the equivalent in Bitcoin. But what you can do is focus on building your reputation, focus on finding ways to earn Bitcoin, whatever it is that you do, start earning Bitcoin for it. And that's going to tie perfectly in with that is if you're somebody who in the future thinks that you're going to be starting your own business or starting to sell your products or services on Nostr, your reputation is going to be instrumental in that whole thing. So I'm not going to tell you what to post on there. The only thing I would say is get onto Nostr as soon as you possibly can. Start building a network there. Start looking at your monthly expenses and saying, can I find somebody to this beauty product that I buy every month? Can I find somebody to buy that from who accepts Bitcoin? And really focus on your network and finding suppliers or sellers of whatever it is you need that will accept Bitcoin. And the best way to find that is using Nostr, tools like Nostr, and really focused on your reputation there. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. Sorry, I've kind of been ignoring the chats here a little bit because I really wanted to get through this, unlike last show. But that's kind of my thoughts on it. So I'm interested to see kind of what other people think of it. I know we're kind of at the end of the show here, but I really think that a lot of people are sleeping on that part of the peer-to-peer economy in the sense that there is going to be no middleman. So there's going to be no one there that holds that trust for both sides. So you have to be the one who puts in that trust. You have to be the one that earns that trust through work, through time. And the best time to start is today with that. So yeah, Crypto Ethan says, how long till Disney and Nickelodeon start making shit coins for 10-year-olds? No doubt. No doubt. So Michael says, who are going to be the judges of the social credit scores? Who is setting the bar, the social or the accepted standards? So Michael, I'm not sure if you caught the first part of the chat here, but I really believe that there's going to be two types of social credits. One's going to be, as you're referring to, the judges. And I think that that's going to be like maybe X, like maybe Elon is going to be one of the judges of social credit. So for example, if X has 22 money transmitting licenses, I believe 22 of them now, 22 states. And so he'll be one of the judges of that. If you say something on Twitter that he doesn't agree with and you have any funds connected to that X account, he can just shut you off. Maybe take your money from that X account. Who knows? Maybe it's Bitcoin even, but it's still connected to him. So he is, in that sense, in that specific example, in a peer-to-peer network, that's not peer-to-peer because it'd be peer, Elon, peer to Elon to peer. So what we want to do here is we want to focus on building our own networks without Elon on Nostr. And so we don't have to even give a shit what Elon thinks of anything that we post. And that's something that Nostr is going to provide. You're going to have one private key. And if you get kicked off of Damus, then you can still transition over to Primal and continue on exactly where you were. Same amount of followers, same feed, all of your posts are still there. And that's why Nostr is censorship proof. So that is kind of my thoughts on that. And in this example too, resellers on the various shopping websites are much like that. Amazon. So this is where you really have to change your mindset here, Michael, a little bit. Because even with Amazon, that's not peer-to-peer. That's peer to Amazon to peer. So Amazon can shut you down. They can do whatever they want in order to sabotage your account on Amazon. They can stop you from earning income in the future. With Bitcoin, with this peer-to-peer network, if you forget about X, if you forget about Amazon, and you just focus on building your own reputation online on Nostr, that's going to pay huge dividends in the future for you. Because you're not going to have to rely on X for your social credit score. You're not going to have to rely on Amazon for your social credit score. You're going to be your social credit score. And that's how people in your network on Nostr view you. Because they're not going to be relying on X or Amazon to fulfill that transaction or hire you to do a job for you. They're not going to care about that. They're going to look at your Nostr account You're going to look at your YouTube channel. That's how this whole thing's going to play out, is everything's going to be based on your reputation. And the more, how can I finish this? The more verification steps that you have there, the better. So for example, just to take this one step further here, because I really like thinking through right to the end here. So with this, say that somebody new shows up to Nostr or whatever it is, but they're trying to, like I said, Bitcoiners trust, but they want to verify. So if somebody wants to put their trust in you for whatever that is, if they want to hire you to do a website, if they want to hire you to do their bookkeeping, or if they want to buy a product for you on Nostr from you, what they're going to do is they're going to look at your profile. Maybe it's connected to zap.stream. They're going to go onto zap.stream. They might watch a couple of videos of yours just to see if you're legitimate, right? And see if they resonate with you at all. So the more different touch points you can have set up, maybe that's a blog, maybe that's a zap.stream, maybe that's your own website with kind of what you're all about. The more verification steps you can set up on the internet, the better your reputation is going to be. Because that's what people are going to be putting their faith in, their confidence in, is not just blindly. They're going to be wanting to do different checkpoints and verify themselves that you are who you say you are. So, Bren says Grayscale took their hand off the beach ball today. Does that mean that the price is running up? No gatekeepers, no rent seekers. And Bren says this is why Bitcoin is hated by self-proclaimed elites or Elons. Right. Think about every industry that we have in the world right now and how many middlemen there are in every industry. And think about why those middlemen exist. They are that checkpoint. They are that insurance for people. They are that last line of defense. If something were to go wrong in that transaction, the middlemen historically have been the people to enforce that. So if I listed a product online and I failed to fulfill that agreement and you paid me and I didn't hold up my end of the agreement there, that's where the middleman comes in and says, okay, well, this person's saying that you didn't do this, so you have to return the funds. That's what the middlemen have done historically. And like I said, there will be a lot of people who exist in that system, probably till they die. But there's also going to be a large group of people who don't want that anymore, who want to create their own economies, build their own networks using Bitcoin. And so with Bitcoin, that middleman is gone. So yes, the fees are gone, but at the same time, it's going to require a whole new level of trust by the peer and the other peer, because there's no one in between there to enforce that trust. It has to be there, or the transaction won't happen. So that's something to consider as we go forward here. Really put that at the top of your brains. Get onto Nostr, download Damus, download Primal. You can find my npub in my description here, and then shoot me a message and let me know who you are. Tell me if you want to, obviously, tell me what your YouTube name is, and I'll give you a follow on there, and we can continue growing this peer-to-peer network. So with that, Rock and Roll says Barry can only sell Grayscale once. Eventually, those coins on Grayscale are going to be gone. And then things will get fun. Daniel over on zap.stream. Shout out to everybody on zap.stream. It looks like we got some zaps flowing in this morning. I'm going to set up a more official, and hopefully somebody in the Living in the Future membership can help me with this. But I'm going to set up some sort of official fund for men's mental health and a women's shelter within Bitcoin. And a portion of every zap from zap.stream is going to be going towards that. So get set up on Nostr. Start going on to zap.stream. we want to make this transition to this new economy, this peer-to-peer. We want to cut out the YouTubes. We want to cut out the Twitters. We want to focus on Nostr, and we want to build our networks and our brands and our communities in these censorship-resistant, decentralized tools that we have available. They're already here. These tools are already here. They already exist, and we just have to start using them. So big shout out to everybody on zap.stream. That is where the Bitcoiners hang out. Much more interactive, much more fun. The only thing I like about YouTube is you can bring up the chats here. Johnny says, can you give me a referral code for Alby? My wallet of Satoshi is not working. I feel like I was looking for a new promo or referral code for Alby on the weekend. I couldn't find it. Maybe I'll message Alby on Nostr. So, and even with that, like messaging people on Nostr, sending a direct message on Nostr. If you want to reach out to somebody like, say, Matt Odell on Nostr, or who? Preston Pish, somebody like that who you'd never otherwise really get in touch with. If you sent them a message on Nostr, what are they going to do? You always have to put yourself in their shoes there. What are they going to do? They're going to look at your profile. They might check out your website. They might check out your zap.stream. And depending on kind of how they view that, of kind of how you're building your network in there, that's what their likelihood is to respond to you. If you're somebody who just got onto Nostr last week and you have 2 posts, they probably won't reply to you. But if you're somebody who's been there for a couple of years and you have all these different interactions on there, that's your social credit score right there. You have the ability to control that now, not with your actions, like in, crossing the road and saying things online, but just by being there and by interacting and getting here this early and getting that set up right now. That's how you're going to benefit yourself in the future. So with that, big shout out to everybody in zap.stream this morning. I did an exclusive show on zap.stream last week after this one, so that was kind of fun. It's something that I do want to focus more of my time and energy on, zap.stream. So we're over an hour. I hope that that's given you a couple things to think about here as we go forward. And yeah, we'll leave it there. So I hope everybody has a great Monday today. I appreciate everybody, even in the YouTube chat. It makes the show so much more enjoyable and interactive. I just love that aspect of it. So big shout out to everybody on YouTube and of course, zap.stream. Thanks for the comments. Thanks for the input. And on your way out, give a little like, give a little zap. And we'll see you right back here first thing tomorrow morning. Have yourselves a great Monday, a great day, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.